There is no doubt the world is facing daunting challenges these days. Look around. We have reached a critical point in human history. Old leadership models, beliefs, and behaviors are no longer working. Centuries of emasculation have brought us to the brink. Men need help, and who better to help us but the women? This is W.E.L.L., the Women's Expressions on Leadership, Learning, and Liberty podcast show, and I'm its host, John Krotek. My guests are accomplished and intelligent women who share not only their personal stories, but give us valuable insights and perspectives on the leadership challenges men face. In a world still dominated primarily by men, these honest perspectives can be a genuine catalyst for male leadership improvement. By exploring possibilities and opportunities for self-improvement and transformation, we offer men hope in an ever-changing, fast-paced, complex world. Thank you for listening and for your support. Lead on. Hi, everybody. I am super excited for this episode. This is season 2, and Lorene Herman has agreed to be the first one on the second series of these podcast shows on W.E.L.L., Women's Expressions on Leadership, Learning, and Liberty, which is freedom. I met Nina several years ago in Sarasota, Florida. She was a real estate agent. She was doing her own thing down there, and she's also a fellow veteran, and she interviewed me on one of her shows, and then I interviewed her on Straight Outta Combat, and that's how we became friends. I want to tell you a little bit about Nina before we get started, because she has got a lot of good wisdom from her journey in her own life, but also she's smart. And God knows we need smart people these days. With all the stuff going on, a little bit of intelligence can go a long way. Let me tell you about Nina. Nina is originally from Lawrence, Kansas, and in 1998, she moved to Florida. She was going to college at the University of Tampa and earned her BS degree. It doesn't mean what you think it means, but it's a Bachelor of Science in Finance. In 2001, she was commissioned into the United States Army and served as a finance officer for just over 7 years. She served in South Korea and completed a combat tour in Iraq. And if you haven't caught that story, listen to Straight Outta Combat, because Nina's story of what happened there in Baghdad is worth the listen. Anyhow, she honorably entered her term of service in 2008 due to the constant pain in her body. And she's been on a long and winding road to figure out what that pain's been all about. She had to go deep. She had to introspect. She's got some certifications that have a lot to do with mind, body, and spirit, massage therapy, personal training, a Rolfer. I'd like to learn more about that. And then she's got other certifications, and she actually had a mobile wellness business, or she's still working on one. We're going to talk about that, with some of her leadership stuff going on there. She's also started studying food healing, and she opened a healthy food truck. And I think she's done that before. And
now that is way in the past.
Okay. So this has not been modified, but anyhow.
Oh, it should have been like past tense. Like was part of my journey that led me here.
Okay. But anyhow, the thing about Nina is she has learned through the school of hard knocks, but also through her own experiences, the power of the mind and thoughts on wellness. You know, we've heard, you are what we think we are. And if you think things, they can come true. And if you don't think things, they won't come true. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But in 2017, she became frustrated with her own mindset. She thought she had to get into the business world, and she did. And she basically got into another passion of hers, which is real estate. What a great place to be in the state of Florida. We all know about real estate in Florida. But she also, on the back end of that, she was still continuing her journey of personal development, growth, and healing and spiritual connections. We're going to get into some of the things that she learned about art in our conversation. Again, I don't want to take up too much time in this introduction. But in 2020, when the pandemic hit, she knew that she had to return to healing and wellness and move out of the real estate more, or a little bit more. She saw what was going on with the virus and how people were being affected on a mass scale. And she thought to herself, I need to take some of my wisdom and I need to get back into it's not even a game. I need to get back into that sector of the human existence, which is wellness. Right now, she's a full-time RVer. Sounds fun. And she loves to explore nature and travel. Nina's come a long ways. She believes that her purpose in life is as a healer, healing the human spirit, mind, and body, but also a messenger. She believes in empowering others to connect more fully to themselves, to the Creator, and others, as we all have the ability to heal ourselves. We just mentioned that a second ago. Nina experienced many years of feeling helpless and lifeless, and she now embraces and wants to feel alive and truly live and help others to do the same. Awesome. I love that. She's currently studying breath work, the power of the breath. There's a lot there. I know there is. And German New Medicine, which I have never heard of, but I'm sure we will hear about it today, of which both she has found to be extremely profound. Nina is coaching others and creating healing and wellness programs, utilizing all that she has encountered along her journey to coach and educate others on their own journeys. She's also preparing to launch wellness retreats in the near future. And I know she's been talking about that for a while now. And we know, I personally know, Nina is going to get there. So anyhow, Nina, thank you for being here on the first of the second year of the Wellness Podcast Show. Thrilled to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here. And I think you should have collaborated with me on writing that bio. You did a much better job explaining.
No, you did great. I mean, it's these bios are great. We can sit here and we can type, because we've all done a lot of cool things and we've all encountered challenges, and it's tough sometimes to write about ourselves. And when we write our own bios, sometimes it doesn't come across. But to me, it's more talking to the person than reading their bio or finding out about them. And you inspired me when you did your own podcast show a few years ago. But when I heard your story about Baghdad and how close you came to maybe not being here with us, I was like, holy cow, that's one challenge, that if you can overcome that fear of dying, you can pretty much handle anything. But anyhow, tell us a little bit about your upbringing,
Sure,
and how you got to Florida.
And just a quick clarification, I wasn't in a position in Baghdad where I was close to dying, but there was a situation, you just have to listen to the to the podcast to understand what it meant on a deeper level to me that was so profound.
But thanks for that. But thanks for that clarification, because Nina's right. But the perception and the confusion is worth the listen. That's what I should say.
I grew up in Kansas and had incredible parents. My parents, I have two siblings, and everything that happens in our journey is all part of what we're supposed to experience here, and it shapes and makes us who we are today. So I grew up in a very strict religious home environment. So there was a lot of things that we were not allowed to do. We weren't allowed to listen to secular music, and my parents were very controlling, and a lot of it had to do with the church and the ground that they set up. And at the time I was very, my parents didn't have to discipline me very much, because they would just look at me and I would be in fear, like I better shape up or else I'm, going to be in trouble. I also grew up with some significant learning disabilities, and I shared that a little bit, and I'll go in the bio. Growing up with learning disabilities, I have a form of dyslexia called non-phonemic awareness, where my brain doesn't process sound. And because I struggle so much with word and sound, when I would speak, it would come out jumbled. Words wouldn't come out how I was trying to pronounce it, and other kids and people would make fun of me of how I spoke. So I just stopped speaking. I became a very shy, child and didn't speak a lot, which then caused a lot of issues as I grew up because I didn't have a way of expressing. I didn't have words to communicate and really get out what I wanted to say. So I held everything in, which is a lot of my issues with pain, is just a lack of expression. And only in my adult life did an astrologer recommended that I start putting color on paper as a form of like communicating with my body and communicating, just to put color on paper as a form of expression. And that has made a significant difference. And I still struggle at times with words, and words are sometimes I say they're not my friend, but I use them for what I have to. And other than that, I work with pictures and color. And that's on the side. What else about my upbringing that would be significant? Yeah, I wouldn't be where I am today without my parents, and the family life that I have. So,
Well, you mentioned the look. Your parents were. I think I grew up in the same household, but in a different state. They could just give you that look and that fear. We talk about fear and how fear keeps a lot of people stifled, and sometimes there's a good fear. And I think, like with you, with your core value sets, you mentioned your parents and the profound impact that they had on you. Let me ask you this, Nina. So you grew up in that household, religious household. What was the role models that you saw from men? What did you learn about men at that, or boys at that stage of your life?
So I'm going to go to the church. The men were the ones that spoke, and in my church that I grew up in, we didn't have women who spoke. The women wore head coverings, and the men were, I'm going to say, controlling. And it was a power, it was judgment. If I look back at my childhood, of what I immediately think is judgment, and separation. Because when you're judging somebody, you're not accepting them, which means you're not able to accept yourself, in my perception. And it becomes a power and control of and hypocrisy of living that is, the church is fundamentally based on love. And because of what man has made it out to be, it's not. It's about judgment. It's about power and control.
No, I think that's great, because it's relevant. You grew up with this vision of men just being controllers and trying to exercise power. And a lot of times, we see people in our lives that don't really have the skill sets to be able to do that in a way that's conducive to a good relationship or a good environment. So you mentioned an astrologer. Okay. And you're very smart and perceptive. How do you, and you have these beliefs, and you're growing up in a spiritual household. I guess astrology is somewhat spiritual. How do you go from this God environment to an astrological environment? What took you there?
Yeah, in 2006, I just gotten back from Iraq, and I was really struggling. And my mother had met this man, Brian Hill, in Sarasota, and he had been really beneficial for her. And she's like, I want to introduce you to Brian. I think he can help. You need to have a conversation with Brian. And coming from a world of anything regarding astrology or your sign, like that was the devil. You weren't allowed to talk about that growing up. I was like, whoa, like this must be worth it for my mom to recommend me have this conversation with him. And I'll never forget it. I walk into this building, I sit down with him, and he had to bring tissues over. I literally cried through the entire session. No one knew me like he knew me. Like, he told me everything about myself and the things that I struggled with. Like, he just spoke to me like, this is how you are, and gave me, practical solutions for like my frustrations and why I am the way I am. And it was profound. It was healing. I still continue to this day to have a relationship with him for astrology readings, because it has been very fundamental in my life of really helping this shy woman who, I don't want to say couldn't think, but I couldn't process, I couldn't communicate, I couldn't express. And that is our lifeline. That's the blood and life force of who we are, is being able to express ourselves. And without that, it's no wonder the amount of pain that I was in. And then, coming from the church environment and structure, and then going to college, and then going into the military, which again is structure and control, right? Very masculine based. And so for this girl who's like just following along, trying to do what she's supposed to do, and fall under that method, it took years for me to blossom, to like break out of that box, so that I could really be who I am supposed to be in this world, and not, I want to say gray box, but
some other construct that society wants to place on you. So, so you said some interesting things, and I'm going to make a couple comments here.
okay.
So, you mentioned journey, and you mentioned it in your bio, and you've outlined some of the things of your own journey. And what I'm getting from you right now is that the journey is all about changes and these adaptations to these changes. One thing, let me ask you this, and then pain can be described on a few different levels that you've outlined, like, there's physical pain, and then there's an emotional pain, and then there's spiritual pain, this disconnect, I guess. How important is it for us to recognize and give ourselves credit for anything that we've done in life? And when we have these challenges, like you with the learning disability, you probably beat yourself up quite a bit, I would imagine. How did you make the transition to go from beating yourself up on occasion to finally empowering yourself and realizing that you deserve to be here?
I'm not going to lie, there's still times when I beat myself up. However, it's the awareness, it's the acceptance. It is looking back and seeing over my lifetime everything that I've been through, and all the challenges, all the joys have led me to where I am today. And it's an appreciation that I wouldn't be who I am today had I not been through those things. And I can tell, like, I don't beat myself up nearly as much as I used to.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah. But I will go back to judgment. When we judge ourselves, I'm very self-critical, but when we judge ourselves, then of course we're judging others as well, right? So I know when somebody's judging me, I know that they're dealing with their own stuff right now. And so if we can control our own judgment of ourselves and be accepting of ourselves, then we're more accepting of others. And we're all so unique, right? Like, that's what the world is made of, is unique beings that can elicit and that can emote their own frequency. And if we were all the same, this would be quite a boring place, right?
With me on the planet, for sure. It'd be like, holy cow. What's interesting though? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, the shame and guilt. I think we've talked about Brené Brown's work before, but the shame and guilt will eat us alive. And so I've just come. It's the acceptance of, I had to go through what I did now, what I had been through to be where I am now, so that I can fulfill and evolve, so that I can help others in the same position. And it's a constant journey.
No, I'm, you finished right there with that little piece about journey. And what's interesting is that we are on our own journeys, and all the journeys are different. And when we have different mindsets at different times, right? You're an intuitive person, right? We know this. How do you, I'm trying to get some tips here too, because it's not always hunky dory for me either. when we're operating in a world where people are at various stages in their development, right? And you might be at a level higher, so to speak, not better, but maybe higher. Maybe you are more aware. What do you do? And this could be a tip for anybody. What do you do to alleviate the frustrations? And especially in today's world, we mentioned COVID and all the wild stuff. How do we use that awareness to benefit ourselves? What can we do? What do you do personally?
Breath work.
See?
Breath work and meditation, and it's listening to ourselves, which it is so hard because I am an overthinker. Our brains, like many of you, always constantly thinking, right? And breath work has been one of those most profound things that if I started in the morning, one, it helps me reduce pain in my body because you can breathe through the pain. We also have stuck emotions that it can help us to release. So there's so many benefits of breath work, but being able to do the breath work and meditate and just be still, and then it allows me to kind of work through, okay, what do I need to work on? What do I need to focus on? And I generally will start my morning, I drink lemon water, I'll do my breath work, and I am a huge fan of spiritual deck of cards. I have several of them. I personally will pull a card, and I have started painting. I had shared a little bit about that in my bio from Brian Hill's recommendation. I just put color on paper, and from the card and the messages that are coming from my guides, I put the color on paper, and then I just look at it. I meditate on this paper. I'll turn it all 4 directions, and I always feel like there's a message there for me of whatever I'm dealing with, whatever was on my mind, whatever I'm struggling with. There's always seems to be a message there of what I need to apply to my life, and it's really a matter of listening to ourselves, listening to our guides. If I'm not painting, I like to be in nature, and nature always reveals something. Like you'll see a symbol in a tree, or the way the leaves are shaped, or there's so many different things that the nature is here to support us. And there's so much if we just take the time to be still and to listen. And and I'm not entirely sure that I answered your question, but
No, you did, because what I got from that, and thank you for being open about that. What I got was the focus on self, and that it's okay to focus on yourself. You mentioned guilt and shame, and those things take us somewhere else. Overthinking is probably the most common thing that all human beings do. It's that gift of being able to use logic and reason, and some people use it more than others. And we see the world the way it is. It's like, what's going on here? But the focus on the self is exactly what the breath work is. You're centering yourself, and you're breathing in this life-giving oxygen that comes from the universe. We're not going woo-woo here. It's reality. And you're giving yourself a chance to develop your awareness. That's kind of what I got out of that. What you just said.
Yeah, it's I do understand that I'm a little woo-woo, but
No,
yeah,
that was not an insult at all. But people go
no,
there.
I didn't take it as an insult, but it is surprising to some. But we have a creator, we have guides, and they're always trying to communicate to us. And when we're closed off, we miss those messages. And when we're misaligned, it causes us pain, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And that's some of the struggle which I see in leadership and in myself, prior to my life now. That was what was significantly missing, is being able to really embrace and embody what our creator has provided for us here.
No, and I like that because, we're talking about awareness, we're talking about self, we're talking about higher consciousness. It becomes, it's amazing to me how these words will be taken, or these concepts will be taken, and then they do something to them and they twist them, and they seem cliche at times. And the world is not cliche. Life itself is very serious, and if we don't take it serious, then we end up stagnating, we end up in pain, we end up somewhere we probably don't want to be. And that's kind of what it is. You basically, Nina, to me, about you is just the journey and how you've been able to, we've heard this, adapt and overcome. You've done it over and over and over again. And it's like a fine wine almost. You don't just pop the cork the first month you put it in the bottle. You have to give it time. And you've done fantastic. So I'm excited to see what you've got going on with the mobile retreats. It would be really cool to hear about that. But tell us about the German new medicine.
German new medicine.
Yeah. I've never heard that. I mean, and I didn't do any research on it. The first time I've ever seen it was in your bio 2 hours ago.
Okay. So German new medicine is from a doctor in Germany, and his son was shot on vacation and later died 4 months later in his arms. And the doctor and his wife were both diagnosed with cancer shortly thereafter. And the doctor said, is this just coincidence, or did what we just went through with our son cause the cancer? And he spent the rest of his life, he died a few years ago, studying, and he studied over 40,000 cases. And in 100% of those 40,000 cases, there was a trauma in that person's life prior to the diagnosis. And it's not just cancer, it's literally anything in the body that you're dealing with. And he had to have at least 500 cases of a particular diagnosis. And I know we're both very anti-diagnosis labeling, but he had to have 500 in a particular area before he would publish any information about it. And it's not just the trauma that the person went through, it is the perception, it's how our psyche perceived the trauma. So, and forgive me, I'm paraphrasing this and hopefully I didn't butcher it up too much. But there's, I think, 20 to 25 different perceptions that how the psyche can perceive a trauma. It could be an abandonment, it could conflict, it could be a territory conflict, it could be a death fright conflict, it could be I don't know what other ones, but at the moment off the top of my head. But the people with the same type of perception ended up with the same lesion in the same area of the brain and in the same area of the body impacted. And our bodies are brilliant. Our bodies are, our creator created us so magnificently. They're always trying to keep us safe. Our bodies are always trying to keep us safe. But if we don't know and understand what our bodies are doing, then we think that our bodies have malfunction and they're not serving us properly. And we go to a doctor and we get pills and medication to be a band-aid of the issue, really, and then cause, oftentimes it causes other side effects that we have to deal with, right? But we're not really addressing the root cause to begin with. So if we understand how our bodies are operating and understand and create that awareness of, we start to go through something, we notice some symptoms, and if we're stopping that moment to be like, okay, what's going on around me, what am I dealing with that's causing this pain or these symptoms, and you start to work to resolve that issue, whether it be a territory issue or a boundary issue. I personally have been dealing with, or had been dealing with, territory boundary issues. And when I started working through those issues, my issue resolved. And I didn't have to have medication. In fact, I was dealing with some things at the time, and I had been on flares of it for what felt like months. Over a course of a couple of years, I kept recurring flares, and I learned German New Medicine, which came across, the synchronicities were quite fascinating. But I ended up rooming with this woman who teaches German New Medicine here in the United States, and she taught this to me. And I actually had already heard of it. In fact, I had Dr. Hammer book, one of his books on my bookshelf at the time. That's a whole nother long story. I won't go into that. But when she taught me this, I was in the middle of a flare, and I was able to work through it within a week, and my symptoms went away. And I didn't have another flare for 2 years until I was dealing with another territory issue. It came back, and I knew exactly what it was, and I worked through it, and I was gone in a week. So if we know and understand how our bodies operate, which there's some very fundamental things that I'm leaving out right at the moment because this podcast isn't all about German New Medicine. But if we understand how our bodies operate, we create that awareness. When we're dealing with things, we can at least start and be able to lessen the impact on our body of how we're going through things, and resolve it at its source, resolve it before it gets to a point where it's uncontrollable. And a couple things to note there. We do need to have our body in regulation, right? We need to be healthy. We need to have the energy. We need to have the nutrients. So how we heal and overcome is mindset, but it's also the movement. It's the structural alignment. It's breath work. It's eating right. It's having the right supplements so it's all, it's a holistic approach to keep your body in regulation, so that, when your bodies are in regulation, it can take the negative and eliminate the negative, right? It can filter out what it no longer needs and eliminate it. But unfortunately, in our world today, with toxins and negative mindset and the social media and the isolation and the fear and all that we're dealing with, our bodies get clouded up, and we can't eliminate the toxins anymore as easily. So that gets stuck in our body, and we end up with trapped emotions. And there's a whole slew of things there. And I just opened up a whole can of worms by
No.
a number of different things there. But
let me, you said earlier that you had a difficult time expressing yourself. With that last couple of minutes, there was no difficulty. So kudos to you and congratulations that you've broken through that threshold, that barrier. That's good. That's a huge sign, right? We talk about signs, and the universe gives us signs. And I'm taking this from you. If I'm wrong, just, tell me I'm wrong. But what I'm getting from you is that the universe gives us these signs that we need to know for self-improvement, right? And then if we start to do some things, 3 things, what I see you trying to articulate is you having a belief in yourself, a belief in self, the breath, mindset, and then having a belief in something greater than yourself, something spiritual, something universal, something godlike, something that can humble us, right? And then understanding that to gain this awareness, to move forward and get past that challenge, we have to understand that it's a process. And what you just said in 2 minutes is that kind of where you're at? And did I get it?
Yeah, it's no doubt a process. And the reality of it is we have everything inside. It's, yes, our creator, the relationship with our creator, but knowing that we have the answers inside, we just have to be willing to connect and listen.
Which leads me to very important C word, choices. And you said you came back, you identified the territorial boundary issue, wherever you were at, you came back. But the second time around, you understood it and you were through it within a week. So that's real life proof in your journey, Nina, that it works.
Yeah.
That your awareness, the choices that you made, and understanding yourself, Nina, was able to get through that. And that's an incredible growth and empowerment. I mean, even since the last time we've talked, what was it, 3 years ago? It's amazing where you were at then and where you're at now. And it's
Oh yeah, I'm not even the same person.
It's exciting to see. So no, that's good. And I, but that's how the universe works. We talk about these reasons, and it's not cliche, but we circled back around, and we're Army buddies, but we're also very much in alignment on a few things. So that's cool. I mean, thank you for that bit of wisdom. So the world's in a real fix right now. We talked about this before we came on the interview. What do you see going on, and what can leaders do, especially the men, that you have this perception of controlling and rigidity? And I have my perceptions too. I think a lot of this is a male leadership issue. But where do you see the world now, and how can men and leaders in general, women, how can we work together to move this human condition into a better state? Big question.
Yeah. I would say first and foremost is self-acceptance and self-love. And there's a huge separation going on. There's a huge power struggle. There's and you had shared what I had mentioned in regards to COVID. And when that started, I recognized that there was a significant issue in how it was being handled that was going to cause a deeper healing crisis than the virus itself, right? Which is coming from fear, which is coming from isolation, which is coming from tactics to control and have power over people, right? And when that happens, then it causes separation. There's the people that comply. And then when you're complying, you're not accepting of others who aren't complying, right? Because you have to comply. You're not willing to accept others who aren't. And it creates then a division and judgment, and this whole fear increases, and fear has its own, in and of its own, discord. Your immunity is lowered in fear. Your cells, the brain is not firing completely, right? So there's a number of things from the fear itself. And I'm getting sidetracked at the moment, but the acceptance of self. So understanding and listening to reason within yourself. Like if I believe XYZ for me, and I am going to operate off of XYZ, and my neighbor to the north operates on LMN, I should be able to accept LMN because I've accepted myself as, I can operate off this. And if they can accept that I can operate off this, then we're able to work as a whole, understanding that everybody has to do what's in their highest and best interest and what resonates with them. And when you're operating at that level, it's not as though how I operate is going to negatively impact somebody else, right? I think there's this whole idea that if you do what you want to do, it's going to negatively impact me. But if we truly listen to ourselves, we're in it for the community. We're in it for the collective as the whole. And it's not as though what I'm doing is going to negatively impact somebody else. I'm just doing what's uniquely me, what is my own frequency, what's right in my best interest, because we are completely and totally unique individuals. And somebody else can be in the same position and I can accept them when I've been accepted, right? Like there's this mutual respect and alliance and community that can be created when we have self-acceptance. I truly believe that. So I truly believe that right now, that is the fundamental problem that we have, is lack of self-acceptance, because without it, we're not accepting, and we're judging, and we're shaming, and we're guilting everybody else because we think they should be under a particular power and control and do a certain way. And I freedom is my number one value, and I get that that's not everybody's, but if we can all operate in our own way, that we can express ourselves without harming others, I think we'd be in a much better place for leadership, for ourselves as individuals, to be able to grow as a community, as a collective, and really make this place, while we're here on Earth, a place that people want to live, where people want
No,
to live.
that's awesome, because so what I get out of that, I'm a quick study sometimes. I'm not always, but sometimes
I
I'm dead.
appreciate the summary.
No, but self-acceptance, what you're telling me and what you're telling the listeners, thank you for listening, is critical to our global community. It's critical. And you know, and as far as like what I believe, what you just said is self-acceptance and self-love are the ingredients or the behaviors that fight the entropy of the universe. And entropy, we know, is chaos and conflict and degradation and all these things that we see, this judgment of each other. I think that awareness is like your mantra. That's like, if there was one word I could think, how would you describe Nina? I'd say she's aware. And I believe that, you know, so
Awareness, acceptance, double A's.
yeah, double A, you know, and it's not the other double A. But anyhow, let me ask you this. So what are three things that men can do, men especially in leadership, can do right now to positively change their own lives and the lives of the people around them or the people who they lead?
I would say one is getting clear on what their mission is, what their purpose is, what are they wanting to do, and revise as necessary. Like, is it going to benefit the collective whole? Two is to really connect to themselves and dig deep, because unfortunately men have been taught not to show emotion, not to be expressive, and so they stuff everything down, right? And now they're full of trapped emotions that, you know, something happens and now it may trickle out, but they're not fully who they are. They're not stepping into their power because so much of their power has been stuffed down, right? So if they can really dig deep and start to look at themselves internally, start to look at some of the things that they've been dealing with that need to be dealt with, and be vulnerable in doing so, and being able to share that and heal through that, that is a significant part of their healing. And it also gives them an ability to then have more empathy for what they're dealing with. It gives them a clear picture. It helps them to relate to the people that they're working with, and the people that are following them. Because if the leader doesn't have followers, obviously they can't lead, right? And
That's true.
Self-explanatory. But to grow followers, you want to be able to relate to them, right? And in this world right now, people are want to belong somewhere. And so being able to, if a leader knows themselves, knows where they're going, and can express that, be vulnerable, people can relate to that and they want to get on board, right? And those are two. I could probably have broken that second one down into the third one. Let's see, what would I say is my third?
You got clarity, vulnerability,
Growing, constantly growing, constantly seeking
self-improvement.
connection.
Yeah.
Well,
that's awesome wisdom, you know, and you have definitely not the same Nina that I knew 3 years ago, which is great, because you're a living and breathing example of a person that is actually living their mantra. You know, you were definitely on the journey, and it's inspiring. And I just know that you got good things coming your way, and probably good things happening today as well. Do you have like a Nina-ism? Like, do you have a personal quote that you relate to, or maybe your own quote that gives you the perseverance and the strength to keep going? Do you have something like that, Nina?
I would say I probably have plethora of ones, but I'm not necessarily consistent with any particular one. Gratitude, there's a I am me movement, and it's mirror decals, right? And I have a mirror decal that says I am grateful. And I think that is probably one of the things, if I can remember every day, of what I'm grateful for, because there is so, like, our world is really beautiful. And the people are beautiful if we really just connect. And just being grateful for everything that I have and for the people and the connections that I have. I'm grateful is probably one of those mantras that I say the most.
It's awesome. And, it's something that we can all listen to and follow. So, all I want to say is thank you for still being, around and doing your thing. And, it is inspiring. And I appreciate you opening up and being honest and wanting to be here and wanting to help others. That's inspiring. So all I can say is, Nina, is thank you. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to do down the road. And if I can ever be part of it, or if you ever need anything from me, let me know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for allowing me to be on your show and sharing my opinions and visions and so forth.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Well. Without you, we don't exist. There is no show. We hope the men who joined us today learned some valuable tips to improve and not be ashamed to use them. Be the change, men. Set the example. Keep going. And for the women leaders out there, keep creating and keep helping us men to become even better men, more effective leaders. Thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and lead.